Thank you very much. So I'm going to rush through some of this a bit, and I'll run over slightly, but also because Peter's introduced a lot of the archaeology that I'll be looking at as part of this project in the next, well, we've got funding for 3 years, we're looking for more as we go on. But to introduce me, well, so the project itself, we're the Humberside Discovery Programme, and we're a part of a community group looking to both promote the archaeology of regions, like the stuff that Peter's been discussing, but also try and get communities involved with this archaeology as well as partners in around, so people like Sam around this table today. So CITiZAN stands for the Coastal Intertidal Zone Archaeological Network, hence why we're interested in places like the Humber. We've got actually 6 discovery programmes around the country, and this is actually an ongoing project this is coming into our 5th year, started 5 years ago. I've been part of it for just less than 12 months as the Humberside, for the Humberside region. So we're community-driven archaeology, so what we're looking to do is really take on community projects, or projects from people in the communities that they might be interested in, and develop them. Give them, essentially, as part of Museum of London Archaeology, I have a lot of skill bases to access and a lot of kit to access that I can then give to communities to use to develop projects that they want to do. And that's part of the reason why I'm here today, because I'll be doing a project on the Barton foreshore soon with a group from Barton that are particularly interested in brick and tile works, for example, in the area. We're, as you can already guess, we're a citizen science project centred around promoting, or at least advertising, destruction of heritage in coastal and tidal zones because of climate change. But that's also through things like you see yourselves in more natural history, so things like coastal squeeze, things like dog walkers, for example, also affecting heritage sites. Well, I'll show you in a second one that I'll go back to Jackson's original presentation as well, to give an idea. As I say, we're a countrywide with a regional focus. Each project has one discovery programme officer, who's myself, and I also have a community archaeologist and a couple of other assistants as well. We run these projects around the area. We're also working with a number of universities, for example, University of Hull, as well as LAN, which is our local advisory network, and it's a number of people. They're both, so for example, I work with a couple of people in the wildlife trusts, as well as, so Yorkshire Wildlife Trust specifically at the moment, as well as more typical cultural heritage associations like the East Riding Archaeological Society. Worth mentioning also where our funding is coming from. So I am Museum of London Archaeology officially, but our programme is supported in York by the Council for Archaeology, and we're Heritage Fund supported, as well as some funding through a number of other partners around the country. And this is something we're looking to develop as well. As I said, we're looking for sustainability after those first 3 years. Our mission, very quickly, so things I've already brought forward, is to raise awareness through the heritage sector of this destruction of heritage on the wider coastline through reasons that you'll already know, through coastal erosion, coastal squeeze, things like that. We're also looking specifically to add to the archaeological data that we have. We have a large data set that we hold ourselves, and we update that through an app and an online recording system, which I'll briefly show you some examples of in a second to show kind of how it looks on the ground, if you like. Through high precision surveys, so this is back to this idea that I have a lot of archaeological kit that I can bring to these community groups to allow a more developed archaeological data set to be created. And then also a continued development with academic connections and trying to really feed this all back into one holistic system. Just to show you the regions very quickly, Liverpool Bay is also based out of York, for example, so we cross across between the two. In fact, my colleagues are over in Liverpool Bay at the moment. And then we've got South Devon Rivers, Solent Harbours, East Kent Coast, and Mersey Island, all of which are constantly running over these first 3 years. The Humberside itself, so it doesn't just involve the inner Humber, which we're discussing a lot today, but also right the way from Barton, right the way down to Skegness. And this was broadly defined before I became involved in the project as both a combination of places that already had existing volunteer networks that I'm now tapping into, if you like, or continuing, as well as areas that are extremely under threat. You'll all know the Yorkshire coastline is 3 to 4 metres a year, up to 10 metres a year in places, and extreme high problem zones. So we're looking at areas that are really, really affected by sea level rise. The method, very quickly, is to recruit and train these volunteers within the communities that they live within, of course, Volunteers monitor the archaeology themselves after this training using apps, so either via a tablet or via a simple smartphone. You can actually use paper and pen as well and come home and do it from home. And then it's all submitted through our online system, moderated by ourselves, and then eventually that all gets submitted to the HERs, the Historic Environment Record, and is then able to be used by anybody doing consultancy or any work within the cultural heritage sector. So things like desk-based assessments, for example. And just to show you, like I said, what it looks like on the ground, I did a project in Hull back in October, November, where we spent 2 days recording various bits and pieces within Hull. So a lot of these were updated and a lot of these were added to. So all of those dots are sites that were already in the database from before we started this project. And then just to show how many, all the extra green dots that we added just in about a 3 to 4 hour gap on the second day, on the Sunday after the training. And I've gone back and added more to this as well, and a number of those volunteers that I trained on the first day, well, the first 2 days, have then gone back and added and subsequently added to this material. Now this specifically looking at a more urban area, these are sites that we knew about, they just weren't recorded within the HER database. So this provides a way of just feeding back into that wider scheme of developing research networks, essentially, developing ways of researching within the wider historical heritage sector. I'll just really quickly go through these, some of the past projects before I started, for example, and continuing. One of the ones, I guess, that we mentioned before, the Cleethorpes Submerged Forest, which is on the Pleasure Beach, which is, so therefore it isn't one of these areas that is highly protected for, and doesn't need to be for the bird life, but is obviously with increased amount of dog walkers, for example, not in the summer because they're not allowed out there, but that increase of footfall, 10.2 million people a year, is affecting that heritage. So it is a different type of impact, if you like, or for a different type of heritage. Some of the kit and things that we can bring, for example, this is a 3D model that I'm actually looking to go back and redo of the Earl's Dockyard in Hull, for those who know Central Hull. There's 3 boats involved in this area, and we this was surveyed 3 to 4 years ago, and this can be something, again, so this constant monitoring of these sites. So I can go back and I can look at this and see how much has been eroded since. Interestingly, I know, for example, these are nearly 3 to 4 metres. This is the old Victorian revetment. These are now exposed 3 to 4 metres worth. So there's at least probably a metre's worth of drop in sediment in certain areas of this. So far in 2019, back to Cleethorpes, I've done quite a bit of work in Cleethorpes because I find it particularly interesting. Those prehistoric landscapes are my specialism as well. We've also run a number of more wider and more typical outreach events, with it being the first year of the project, trying to get the support and the tie-in and the sign-ups from the wider communities, and also trying to get people to suggest areas that they may be interested in looking at. We're also doing, and this fits back into this England Coast Path, we're also developing these low-tide trails which are going to fit into this England Coast Path, of areas where the public have access to already, where they can go out and do self-guided tours of the heritage themselves, which we'll have set up through an app site as well. So this is also one of the big things that will come out this year, with it being launched in 2020, looking at areas like Cleethorpes, the Pleasure Beach area. Further plans, so one of the important ones, or for me, is North Ferriby, going back to those prehistoric landscapes. The submerged forest is actually exposing itself quite well at the moment because of the high storm events that we had. Kiara and Dennis exposed a lot of that foreshore specifically recently. So going back to places like that and constantly monitoring those areas, and hopefully trying to get a training network in that area, which I don't have at the moment, although I do have a couple of people that are going down on a day-to-day basis and looking at that material. Just very quickly run through one that I'll be running in Barton soon, and if you'd like to promote this in any way, that'd be absolutely awesome. On 25th and 26th of April, we're actually going to go and survey down at Foster's Wharf and Spencer's Yard. For those who know it, it's the other side of the sailing club on the Barton foreshore. And the idea is that we'll record what we can of this material that's accessible. Mostly it'll be the jetty system that's on the front there. And this is directly tied into that brick and tile trade, again, so it's building up that story. It's a well-known story in Barton of the brickworks that developed through the 18th, 19th and 20th centuries and have now declined. And it's interesting to just have a look and try and tie this back into things like the Heritage Trail of Jackson and the HNF settlement here. Just out of interest quickly, This is a 1929 image, and it shows that jetty, small inlet and jetty and Spencer's Yard. So a relatively small brick workings. By 3 years later, they've got a massive dock in there, which is the dock you see today. Large brick pits. The development, this is where the sailing club is today, so the sailing lake's not there yet, but it is within about 5 years it's dug out completely. And then you've got various other structures within there we may be able to find by doing some survey work and really tying them down. This is a structure that wasn't in the HER at all, and part of the RCZA, the Rapid Coastal Zone Assessment Survey, which is run by Historic England. This is the last one to be done, and it's now been recorded, but with no additional data. So we'll be adding that data directly to the HER for future reference.
Can I just interrupt there?
Yes.
There's a quick question. Have you made the link between Foster's Wharf and that development area and Earl's Shipyard?
So as in they are connected, yes, because they're transporting directly to Earl's, yeah, and into Hull itself, because you've got a lot of that going on in Barton into Hull as well.
Right, specifically, that's the digs in what is now the sailing club pit.
Yeah, that clay.
Earl's.
Yes, yeah. So they're owned by
Earl's.
yes,
that.
Yeah. I have got that. Actually, I'm going to Lincoln Archive tomorrow to do more of the background research, but I have come across that. It's written, like I say, a lot of the historical evidence for this is written down. Just the archaeological surveys have never been done and pieced together. So a lot of that written documentary work has been done. I just need to synthesise it, if you like. But yeah, it's really interesting, the connections between, well, within the whole in Humber, in fact. Some of the research aims quickly, so fitting into what you were just saying there, so trying to kind of produce this synthesis of this area and how it all ties in. Interesting. So this is the Admin Cement Works, which is also based on a company that was in Hull. Originally had a cement works in Hull, then built another one down here, then closed that one and went back to Hull. So there's lots of stories of how these landscapes are connecting and how we can really tell a bit more, a better understanding of this region in general. And bringing up things like the North Ferriby boat, why we don't promote it in this region as much as we should, the earliest plant boats in the country and in Europe. So quick acknowledgements from the local area, from people that have been helping me kind of develop this research, so doing the documentary side of things. And then in the longer term, just to really quickly add and summarise, what we don't have a lot of understanding is the later archaeology of the inner Humber. So you saw what Peter was discussing before, that prehistoric landscapes. It'd be interesting to see if there's more of this tile and brickworks that we're not seeing. The evidence seems to be there again. And obviously keeping a good understanding of what's going on in the Yorkshire coast, where because there's been so much erosion, the fact that it's happening so quickly, we're losing so much. It needs to be better understood from a cultural heritage perspective. And that's me. And if you are interested, it's worth just checking out our website, and obviously more events and things will be going up on there. Any questions? Thank you.